Hey, this is Luke Simonds with Salt Strong. Today I have a fun video for you, shows some fun fish catching, but most importantly, I just wanted to highlight the importance of knowing the feeding trends that are happening, the real-time feeding trends. We've done a lot of videos about how to use online maps and how to find good spots from online maps, and yes, that is effective. Yes, it's very important. And you can use online maps to find some really good structure without having to waste a lot of time on the water, exploring around in unknown waters. But if you don't know the trends, if you don't know the real-time feeding zone trends, your plans could be totally off base. And conversely, if you just know the feeding time trends, you have a huge leg up because you know the exact types of spots to look for to maximize your success. So this trip in particular, I believe, is just a good example of the importance of trends, because what I was doing, I just went out, I had a short trip. First cast was at 7:10 a.m. Last cast was at 9:42. So it was just over 2.5 hours, all in areas I've never been to before. It was a total exploration trip. And all I did is I just used the trends, the latest trends that have been reported in the community platform from both us and the members. And I just spent 10 minutes on the maps before the trip, and I selected some spots based on the tides, based on the weather, based on the wind direction, and I just went out there and fished them, and I recorded it. And all I did is I just took a couple lures. These are the only 2 lures that I used. I didn't even bother taking a tackle box, and had some great success. I even caught a slam in the first 20 minutes of fishing. So here's the footage, and at the end I'll go through some details on how you can do this as well. So here is the first actual cast. This got off to a great start. I'd stopped the boat, off the flat, and I was just slowly making my way on the flat. I wanted to fish the edge, and that's exactly where this trout hit. I was throwing the top water, got a trout on the board the first cast. Actually, that's bad luck. Most cases, I don't like to catch a fish on the first cast most of the time, but at this day in particular, it worked out great. And so what I was doing is I was just slowly working my way up towards the shoreline. I was going up towards the first cut that I identified in that pre-trip plan. So what I was doing, I was just trying to get an understanding of exactly where the fish were. I was seeing some mullet up by these trees, and I just had a strike, so I stopped out in that open area for a little bit. Couldn't get it to get hooked. It popped a couple more times. It was probably a small snook. And so what I did is I then just kind of got a little bit closer and worked my way closer towards the cut, and this is where I got my first red. There we are. It's not a big one, but it's something. It's probably a snook. Oh, a redfish came up and popped it. A little guy too, that's pretty funny. Little fella. Right in the back hook. So I made a couple more casts up there. I still was using this top water. In this case, it was a Rapala skitterwalk. It was the bigger version, so I was surprised that little small red hit it. But I just kept making some casts up there. The current was flowing from right to left, and those fish were holding right on the edge. Oh. Yeah, just then I missed a couple pops, and what I like to do is I like to follow those up with a subsurface lure, because those will generally get a good hook set. So I just missed it, so I'm gonna switch over to the subsurface. I know there's a feeding fish there. He's wondering what happened to his meal. Slam shady on the paddle tail, sling it in there, and that should get some action. Ooh, that sounded like a snook. There we are, got him. Snook, there's my slam. So this is the first 20 minutes of fishing, and I had now locked in my slam, which was pretty cool. I'd never fished this spot before, and this is just the power of having an effective plan once you know the trends. Little fella, but still fun. And so I missed a giant fish on my topwater. It was the biggest wake I've ever seen behind a topwater plug, and so I switched to subsurface, making some more casts, hopefully get that big one to strike. Unfortunately, it wasn't the big one, but still fun anyhow. Little fella. That cut finally slowed down, so I started just moving out, and I was going to go on the outside and check out and explore some more territory and fish on next to the mangrove. Bunch of little snook in here. Okay. So the next action happened just a little bit further, and this is on top water. I switched back, and this is a good lesson on what to do and on how to catch fish that are just not hitting the top water. They're following but not hitting. And here is what I did, and this is a good trick to use for if you have a guest who isn't very experienced with lures. This is a good way to get the fish fired up, and just tell them to cast where the top water was, and they'll generally catch the fish. All right, so that one missed. Sometimes throw a paddle tail, sling the top water out of there. Now it's looking for it, and then throw a paddle tail in there, and they'll usually hit it. Oh, there we go. Oh man, I came up and smacked it. I was too quick with the hook set. Dang it, I messed up my bait a little bit. It did exactly what it's supposed to do. I just jerked it too fast. Yeah, and I couldn't get that fish to hit. I'm pretty sure it was a red. It was waking like a red normally does, and so I missed out. I believe that was a little snook there. I'm just putting this in fast forward. And I was just, again, my goal here was to explore some new areas, so I didn't want to spend too much time in any spot. So I picked up a move again, and coming up soon is a unique strike in the fact that I was using the paddle tail, and I had, you know, here's the cast. So I made a cast up close to this island. I was retrieving it, and then I just liked the look of it. I was seeing a good amount of bait and just looked good, and so I turned around. So right now I stopped. I was putting the power pole down, and so that right now my paddle tail is literally sitting on the ground. And as soon as I made contact, there was redfish on. So it literally hit the paddle tail as it was just sitting on the ground, and it's not scented too. This is not even a scented paddle tail, and it smacked it. So it's pretty funny that the first good red of the day actually hit when the paddle tail was sitting on the ground doing nothing. So the next spot is I actually picked up a move. I went to, this is spot number 2 from the pre-trip plan, and a very similar spot. And so this is the exact same type of spot that I caught the red and the couple snook earlier. So it's just outside of the current coming from a cut. And the exact same thing happened, right? I got that paddle tail up there right on the edge of the current flow, and snook. You know, first cast up there was a snook. Again, not a huge one, but these things are a ton of fun, and you never know when those bigger ones are there. And so here's my very next cast. Cast number 2, did the same thing. You know, cast it up there in the current, and snook on again. And this one unfortunately got me wrapped up in the trees, so I had to go up there and ruin the spot. Let's see if I can get this guy out of here. Fortunately, it's a small one. All right, come on here, bud. There we are. Get him unhooked. All right, there you are. Let me go ahead and cut this. I need to retie anyhow. All right, so after retying, again, just went back to exploration mode where I was just covering ground, keeping the eyes open for action, of course. And here in a second there, the water was getting clear, the sun was getting high at least. And so I got up a little bit taller so that I can hopefully get some sight fishing in. And cast number 2 while up there, got a nice strike and solid redfish on again. All right, nice looking red. All right, so I was just continuing down the shoreline, just smart casting, right? Just targeting just unique spots that look good. And this is another example of a fish hitting when the bait is basically sitting on the ground. I was messing with the trolling motor here in a second. I bend down to get it. I basically stop reeling, and as soon as I get up, the fish is on. And so it's smart to when you are retrieving, you know, paddle tails is, you know, straight retrieves do work, but do make sure to pause it every so often, even if it's a full pause where it goes to the bottom. You never know when a fish is trailing it, and sometimes all it takes is a pause and they'll go smack it. All right, so this is the final redfish, and again, I was doing the same exact thing. I was just covering ground. I was keeping myself as high as possible, trying to get some sight fishing. I didn't do any sight fishing, but I was just casting towards potholes and towards anything that looked unique. So there's a solid red. All right, well, hope you enjoyed that video. This is, again, just a great example of the importance of the real-time feeding zone trends. If you get that, if you just know that information, you can have great success without having to bother with live bait, without having to lug around a bunch of tackle. As I said before, I literally did not even bring my tackle box. I just brought just a few rods rigged up one with topwater, one with a jig, you know, a paddle tail jig. This is our slam shady design. This is what most of the fish were caught with. And this is just great because it can be used at really all depths. Obviously this is just topwater. This is all round. And then I had a third rod with the weedless option, just in case the weeds were bad. I could just switch to that. I didn't even bother using it. The weeds weren't that bad. So just these two basic lures is really what I had all the action with. And this was something that for many years I just thought wasn't possible. I used to spend, you know, 30 minutes or more every single morning catching a bunch of bait, blacking out my live well. And in this example, I already had a slam in that time that I would have been messing with live bait. And so what I recommend doing if you haven't yet done this is just having a close network of anglers who you share reports with, or at least who are giving you just real-time insight. This isn't, you know, like the magazines. I used to rely on the magazines and TV shows, and the problem with that is they're just not real-time. They just can't be. Even the magazines who get, you know, monthly subscription magazines, I used to subscribe to all of them, and I would go and look at the trending reports, and all of those are outdated. When I say real-time, ideally within a week, you know, a week at most, ideally within the last couple of days, and just so very important to have a good network of fishing friends who are sharing reports. And if you don't have that, I highly recommend checking out our Insider Fishing Club. That's really the design of the entire platform, is to focus on the real-time trends for anglers who are just pursuing inshore saltwater fish, redfish, sea trout, snook, flounder, and then the migrational fish, you know, tarpon, triple tail, as those come into effect. So if you'd like information on that, click down below. And again, if you are a member, you'll be able to see the pre-trip plan from this trip, where I go through the lowest level of Google Maps on exactly, you know, why I selected the spots I did, and then the post-trip analysis, which shows exactly where every single fish was caught, so that you can look for the same types of spots in your area based on the conditions to maximize your results. So anyhow, thank you so much for your time and watching this video. Leave a question down below if you have any. Otherwise, hope to see you again soon.